What's going on, everybody? It's your boy JRich, back for another episode of Across the Pod with my main man, Tom. Tom, we have a lot of conversations to have this week, especially after Salah did not play this past week. And I don't know if you saw, it's apparently going to be rescheduled for game week 24, and we still have our triple captain ready to use. But how are you doing, my friend? Game week 16 is here. We're here to preview all of the players that we want to be adding to our team, some of the transfers we might make, and then maybe even do a little bit of wildcard discussion as well, because I think there's 3 teams you want to look at right now. But how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back. I've got a few difficult questions for you this week, which I think we need to navigate together. Also, very glad you get to see a bit of the British UK weather, postponing some games, a bit of wind over this side of things.
A bit of wind, yeah. 80 miles an hour, I believe, if I recall.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what happens. The UK shuts down with a bit of wind. But no, good to be back. I think let's talk some fixtures. Let's talk about who to target. I've got a few difficult questions for you, as I mentioned. And then, yeah, we need to have a look at our team and what to do. I wish we had our wildcard still, but we don't. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot to sort out. I see you have a graphic pulled up for us here. Please talk to me through this and why you think it is so valuable.
I think the only thing that I really want to highlight on this is, and it's quite rare for this to happen, is the 4 teams projected to score the most goals are also the 4 teams expected to keep the clean sheets. So Chelsea, Newcastle, Liverpool, Arsenal are the players that you want in your team this week, right? And I think Chelsea, you're looking at the likes of Palmer. I think we need to have every week it seems we need to have a conversation about Jackson. He's like,
really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we can get there.
I think we can get there. Newcastle, I think Isaac is still one of the best strikers in the game if you can get him in. I still don't have him just because I'm hanging on to Erling Haaland with my last fingertips. Brilliant, love that. Liverpool, I think Salah, and a question about Trent this week. I'd be interested in your thoughts on Trent. Arsenal are kind of like steady eddies, and one of my questions is quite a difficult one for you on Arsenal assets, but I do think that clean sheet percentage is just so much higher than everyone else that if you have the likes of Raya, Timber, Gabriel, another question for you, whether to keep him or not. I think he hasn't trained again, so I think that's just kind of the main things I want to highlight, but keen to get your thoughts on a couple of those points there.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of highlighted on it, and we could touch on it going through the fixtures, yes or no, but it's Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. Those are the main teams you want to be targeting, both bringing in players, defenders, midfielders, etc. Because you look at their fixtures for the next 6, 7, even longer than that, game weeks, it's just green pretty much across the board. And I think a few of them play Tottenham, and we saw how it worked out for Chelsea versus Tottenham, one of the best games of game week 15. But yeah, I think we have to have the conversation of how many Chelsea assets do you bring? Who are the right ones? Same case with Liverpool, because I think with Liverpool especially, there's discussions about Trent, Salah, obviously, but is there that third player that you want to bring in? And then, of course, Arsenal, whether you stick with a midfielder or attacker for Arsenal, or do you triple up on Arsenal defense? And that's kind of my conversation with you is, do you want to maybe bring in a Saliba, a Gabriel, who we'll kind of see with him, Timber and Raya, or do you stick with a Saka, who's great and is clearly the best playmaker for their team? He's great on those corners, which obviously they convert on at a very high rate, but maybe with the strength in the midfield right now, you could look to tripling up on Arsenal defense and then finding other assets in the midfield, kind of saving you some money as well. But I like what you have here. I think it's a great indication of kind of what's going to happen, not just this week, but going forward as well. You want Arsenal, you want Liverpool, you want Chelsea, and I think the Newcastle attack is great. And when they play at home, the clean sheet potential, of course, is going to be there.
Yeah, I love that. I do think, though, what would be interesting to hear is, let me name the best 3 players from each of those teams that I'd have, and let's see if you agree or disagree. So for Chelsea, I'd probably go with Cucurella, if he has the right boots on.
You won't quit on Cucurella.
I like Cucurella. I think Palmer, that's an easy one, and Jackson.
Okay.
For Liverpool, I'd go. Well, let's see your thoughts on those 3. You agree with that for Chelsea?
I still am I still believe Cucurella is too expensive. And for defense, I would rather, because the thing with Chelsea is I love Chelsea's attack, but they are not a team that's going to keep a clean sheet very often, even against poor opponents. You look at their run right now, they have, I think, 1 in like their last 10 game weeks. I'm not a big believer in their ability to keep a clean sheet. So that's the only reason why I don't love Cucurella for the price. But otherwise, I think he's a fine asset because he is going to be involved in the attack and get assists.
And you're thinking Enzo instead then?
I mean, Tom, I have one question for you. Name an FPL creator, which I guess I am one now, that was on Enzo before me. Because once again, he is returning.
I don't think anyone is stupid enough to be on it before you.
You can say it's stupid, but it's working out.
I know, yeah.
Everyone's
jumping on the bandwagon now.
And now everyone's transferring him in. He's one of the most transferred players into the midfield. I believe he's now over 5 mil. I had him at 4.8. I was talking about him at 4.8. He should still be on your watch list because he's only 5 mil. Like, what do I gotta do, Tom? He's playing in a 10 role beside Cole Palmer, who attracts 3 defenders. He's always wide open, and he's getting assists from the other corners. So you have him on set pieces for the corners from the right side, left side, depending how you look at it. And then Palmer plays the other side. Why don't you want Enzo Fernandez in the team? It is ridiculous to me that we continue to have this conversation about Jackson, and now I have to do the same thing for Enzo Fernandez when he's been great for the past 5 weeks.
God. Well, there you go. That was a nice little monologue. JRich FPL pioneer for Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah,
will die on that hill.
Exactly.
Let's see how he does. You know what? I actually kind of rate it. I'm coming around to the idea. I'm still just not fully with it. But he's got assists, goals, non-stop in the last game weeks. And for the price, how can you not turn that down? That is ridiculous. Yeah. So let's see how it goes this week. We'll have this conversation again next week. For Liverpool, I think it's a little bit more difficult. I'd go Trent, Salah, and then I'd probably go Kelleher for now. Even though
you're not worried about Alisson?
I'm not sure what would happen with Alisson. I think that's the only thing.
Because Alisson played yesterday or 2 days ago, didn't he? And
yeah, but I think Kelleher has his spot nailed for the Prem for now. Maybe long term. To be fair, I don't even think there's 3 Liverpool assets I'd want. I think I'd just want Salah and Trent. You can say maybe Van Dijk, but it would be Trent over Van Dijk. I wouldn't double up on Liverpool defense.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Virgil's not doing enough attacking, and especially I believe he's 6'4" right now, and obviously I still like the clean sheet potential, but I just don't see a use of bringing in Virg right now. I don't think he does enough attacking. He's kind of like Saliba when Saliba's not scoring goals at a more expensive price, and so I'm kind of with you there. 2 Liverpool is all I need, but Trent and Salah are pretty expensive in their own right, so just 2 will be fine, though, for me.
Yeah, Arsenal, I think it's Raya, Timber, Saka for me. That's why. If I was on Wildcard, those would probably be the 3 Arsenal. I think Saliba's more expensive. Timber
he's 6'2" right now.
Yeah, and Timber's like 0.5 cheaper, which I think you can spread elsewhere. Gabriel, I think, is probably the best defensive asset, but you said he might not have trained, so I just think if you're not on Gabriel, just try and avoid it for now. He missed the last one, and it can kind of be frustrating having that much money locked up in him.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Gabriel for the last 2 game weeks, didn't play. Now, luckily enough for me, there has been some decent options on the bench. And even for our team right now, there's some decent options on the bench as well. But it does seem like there's a question whether or not he will play. Now, Timber did come off the bench in the Champions League game, so he should be fine to play this week. He's only 5'7", Saliba 6'2", Gabriel 6'2" as well. So Timber's been rising. He was 5'5", I believe, last week. Now he's all the way up to 5'7", because Gabriel is very unlikely to play. But I think if you have him, I don't know if I sell him, just because I know that once he comes back, he's going to be nailed. He's going to be a huge attacking threat. But it sucks that the weeks that they're scoring all these goals from corners, he's the one who's not playing, because normally that's his job in the team.
Yeah,
But I'm with you on those 3. It's just potentially if Gabriel was available, I'd prefer him over Saliba 100%. And Saliba would be the odd man out for me. It'd be Gabriel, Timber, and Raya. Obviously, you can make the case for Saka, but I'm leaning potentially towards not having Saka in the team to make it a little more differential. And we can touch on that a little bit later as well.
Well, do you know what? That is the perfect caveat. It's a segue, if you will, to the first question I have for you. And it's more me. I don't know if I'm overthinking things right now. I don't know if it's Arsenal not like fully clicking attacking wise. A lot of people saying Saka is 100% essential. And I'm starting to think, I think his expected goals across the season has only been like 3 or 4 in the last like few games. It's very, very low. His goal involvement is still very high and 3rd best in the league, but that's mostly through assists. Yeah, that's through assists, but I think his expected goals are like really, really low. Obviously, he's on penalties, but for me, out of the essential group of Saka, Salah, Palmer, I think Salah and Palmer offer you so much more than Saka right now. So I'm thinking, like, if you want to spread that fund elsewhere, for me, I'm not sure, but it's a question for you, is whether you think Saka's essential.
This is the exact dilemma I had coming into this game week. I wanted to pull it up to kind of show the people what he's been doing. Like, scoring wise, he hasn't done a whole lot since the West Ham game. And like you said, it's really just the assists from that right side when he swings it in. Like, that's how he's getting all of his points. You see the 3 assist game against West Ham, 1 against Forest. But in a lot of ways, like, offensively, Arsenal's been really poor, like really, really poor. And it's been highlighted even more so by their inability to score goals in open play. And you look to even, I believe it was against Fulham, Saka did score, but I think it was Martinelli was offside on that goal. And so, of course, they don't score an open play yet again. And at this price, at 10.6, I think I'm with you, Tom. Like, I think especially for our team, and we have 5 transfers right now, when you're talking about those big 3 assets in Palmer, Salah, Saka, like, we don't have to have Saka. And with his ownership right now, 43%, I think that could come down, and you'd be really differential if you didn't have him in your team. So what is your next point you wanted to get to? Maybe we can discuss how we can get a little bit different, bringing in maybe a Jackson and pivoting off of a Saka.
You won't let it go. The next question I have for you is, who is the best 5.0 midfielder? And I think it's a lot of people looking at that price point, looking at Rodgers, looking at Ahmad. You've already been on a minute rant about Enzo, so maybe that is just your answer. But give me a 10-second. Who's your favorite and why out of those 3?
Oh, man, picking one is tough. If I'm picking one, it's probably still Rodgers. I just think his ability both to get assists and score goals doesn't have the best fixture run by far. It's by far Enzo. You look at what Chelsea has over the next 6-7 game weeks. It's just green across the board. But what Morgan Rodgers does, both offensively and setting up players as well in that kind of hybrid cam role, does play the left side as well. I think he's probably your best bet. A little bit more expensive, a little bit less differential between him, Ahmad, and Enzo. But if you're fine kind of eating and playing the consensus game a little bit with Rodgers, I think he does have the most upside for sure. And you brought it up with Ollie Watkins as well, that surprisingly their fixtures aren't as bad as they appear on paper. They have a pretty good fixture run as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Ollie Watkins is another interesting point with Duran scoring again. I don't think he's necessarily nailed.
Yeah.
It seems like this question comes up where Watkins is 100% nailed and you want him in your team, and then he scores 2, and then the next game he doesn't do anything, he's subbed early. I just think there's so much uncertainty at a 9 million striker that it's not even worth having Watkins at this point, and Rodgers is enough cover, I think, for Villa. Similarly, I'd probably go Rodgers over Enzo, just because if I've got Palmer, doubling up on Chelsea isn't necessarily as exciting as just having something different. But I do agree with your point around blah blah blah. Enzo plays the 10, blah blah blah. So
and he's 2 bonus points, Palmer with 3 this past week. It's been pretty good run for Enzo right now.
Who's your favorite captain this week? And I think this is the hardest one out of the captaincy picks every week. We either seem to nail it for this team, but in my own personal team, I seem to absolutely fucking it up at the minute. On paper, 3 really good fixtures for probably the 3 best premiums in the game. Salah against Fulham. I think on paper they're not expected to score as many as Chelsea are, but Salah is just absolutely on a heater right now. There are some concerns. I saw people saying that he might get rested in this game, but I just don't see that when Liverpool are going for a title charge. I think because he played 90 in the week. But for me, I just think Salah's so nailed on that right wing. I do think Fulham concede a lot less goals than Brentford, though. I think Brentford have 17th worst defence in the league, and Fulham's up there in the top 5. So I guess there's a question about whether, is Fulham a hard fixture for Salah? I don't actually think so. So I think for me, we've spoke about Saka not being essential. That's probably out the running for me, and it would be between Salah and Palmer. But keen to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think that Palmer's gonna be way more. I think he'll be much more captain than Salah, and it's so difficult to pick between the two because, to your point, Fulham is much better in terms of how they've played this season, especially, Brentford away, they're still winless on the season, and they're not going to beat Chelsea this week, at least. I would not project them to do so. And so then you get into, do you run with probably the hottest player in the EPL right now in Mo Salah, or do you go with Palmer, who had a pretty good week against Tottenham? I'm kind of leaning Palmer. And maybe that's just I'm all over Cole Palmer. I love him, and I think he's going to be great again this week against Brentford. But I would not be shocked if people decided to go Salah. I think both are great picks. I think it's tough. I had Salah as my captain last week, and Palmer was my vice captain, and it just kind of worked out that Salah didn't play, and Palmer got 18 points. But I think I'm going to be riding the heater with Palmer, who I believe has scored in his last 3 or 4 games. Now, he did get 2 pens in the last one, but I'll take it kind of however he gets it.
Yeah. And I think Chelsea do tend to get a lot of penalties. So do Liverpool, to be fair. So maybe it's close on that front. But I do agree with you. It's quite a tough one this week. I'm leaning Palmer over Salah, just given it some Chelsea-Brentford I can see on paper being a 3-2 to Chelsea, and Fulham at home being a little bit more of a tougher fixture to navigate, probably a 2-1 to Liverpool. So I just think on the scheme of things, I'd probably say Chelsea are likely to score more goals and Palmer's likely to be involved in at least one or all of them.
Yeah. No, I'm with you for sure. So I guess we'll be captaining Palmer this week. I like it.
Yeah. Okay, that was easy. Next one. I don't know if you saw, it was announced the new mystery chip is out. The assistant manager. I've not had much time to really look into it, but I've seen basically the essence of it is you bring in a manager from a team. The top managers like Pep or Slot will be 1.5 million,
Slot,
which you have to use out of your team value. And if they do well, you get like 6 points for a win, 3 points for a draw, whatever, and you can use them for 3 game weeks. And it also works across double game weeks. So if you use them in a double game week and then 2, you end up getting 4 fixtures. So pretty interesting to like start to plan and think about that. Not sure how it's easy to navigate that with like when you want a free hit, and we want to obviously use our triple captain in a double game week. So definitely something to consider. And I think also the lower down managers, if they get a win against higher up managers, get a lot more points. So it's like whether you want to go for like a Brentford manager on a good run of fixtures, or someone that you just think is going to turn it up. I was even thinking about, Eddie Howe, we're down in like 13th at the minute.
That's true. Yeah.
If we get a run of 3 really good fixtures, why would you not use that in a team that should really be thinking about fighting for like 5th, 6th place, but right down in like 13th? If you can get some good fixtures out of that, I think it's 10 points for a win. You get 30 points from like using this, which is pretty crazy, but obviously that's contingent on results. But I thought I would just flag that. I don't know if you'd seen anything about it.
Yeah, I was watching the video on it yesterday, and it's interesting because then people start pulling the data for it, and I believe it was Bournemouth has the highest 3-game stretch so far this season, where they had, I think, 2 upsets, and they scored 46 points from the assistant manager in the 3 game weeks, which is just insane. But it's so tough because not only do you have to, once again, eat into your own funds, and this is a situation where even for my personal team, I'm like, man, I wish I was working the price rises a bit more to help gain some funds if I knew I had to spend 1.5 or even 1.5 obviously max on a manager for that game week. Because you brought up the other good point, how can you triple captain and do the assistant manager chip kind of all in one week? And I don't think that's been very well explained by the people who run FPL yet, and kind of how that's all going to work. So luckily for us, it's not till game week 24, so we don't really have to worry about it. We can kind of start to plan for it in the next few weeks and kind of see how that goes. But yeah, it's an interesting wrinkle for now, and especially with, I believe, game week 24, that's when Liverpool is going to get their double game week. So I think a lot of people will be using it that week.
Yeah, exactly. And they have said that when you use this, it blocks you from all other chips. You can't wildcard, you can't free hit, you can't triple captain. So that's just like another difficult thing to maneuver. The last thing that I had was this, and it's because you mentioned maybe bolstering our defense. So, maybe I'll pass over to you now.
I like it. All right, Tom. So then we have some decisions to make, because this is like just my personal watch list that I'm looking at right now. As I kind of talked about for the defense, it's Trent, it's Gabriel, Saliba, Timber. If you want to go to Ait-Nouri, again, he's kind of a short-term one for right now. Lewis, I think, could be great even after his suspension. He's suspended for this game week. And then your boy, Matty Cash, I would swap him right out for Digne right away. Played right mid in the Champions League this week. I believe he had 2 shots on target, should have had at least an assist, set up a goal as well. He was great, and at 4-4 is a great option as well. And Mbumo made everybody pay for touching him out with a goal and assist this past week. He still kind of has to be there. The fixtures aren't great right now, but I do want to monitor him because we know that he is a massive part of their ability to score goals. Bruno Fernandez, who's still in our team. Smith Rowe, actually, I can take him out. He's not going to be making my team at any point. He was on the watch list from before. Rogers, Enzo, and then Ahmad, who you brought up as well. So if you were to bolster the defense, Tom, where would you start to look? Because we've talked about this a little bit. taking 8 Nuri and even Cunha, who I believe now is what, 3 straight blanks for Cunha in the last 3 game weeks, which, I mean, at this point, I'm ready to get rid of him. 8 Nuri, again, they still have 2 more good fixtures, maybe 3 if you count United. But how would you go about bolstering that defense, and where would you go? We talked about getting rid of Saka, but how do you look at it from this perspective right now with this team?
Yeah, quite an interesting one. I just think that the players we would want is Cash, Timber, Trent. I do think that Digne to Cash is probably enough of a sideways move that it doesn't matter too much. And with the way Cash played midweek and then didn't play last weekend was quite frustrating, but you could see that happening again. The only question for me is I want to get rid of Aït-Nouri and Cunha, but is that a silly option with Ipswich at home? That's probably the best fixture you could have other than Southampton, right? Yeah. And can they clean sheet, Aït-Nouri do well, Cunha do well? I could see us transferring them out as a little bit premature, because I think after this week, I'd even be tempted to take them out against Leicester away, because I don't think that's an easy fixture for Wolves as everyone thinks it is, and then they're into a horrible run after that. So maybe hold Aït-Nouri and Cunha for this week, maybe next week, depending on how well they do. I think if they do badly against Ipswich at home, we can just absolutely, yeet
get them out
the
next day.
Yeah, honestly. The rest of it, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it, right now, thinking about it. I don't know how much... I don't know if you agree, but if we were to get one Arsenal defender in as well as Raya, I would go Timber right now.
Yeah, so for me, it's probably Colwill I would take out. Because as I kind of mentioned, I'm not the biggest fan of Chelsea's defense as it stands right now. Now, the issue is then, do we keep Saka in? Because he's kind of the immediate guy that we talked about potentially moving on from. And then how else do you want to navigate the rest of the team? Because we could go cheaper. We could even pivot down from Semenyo, who's done like literally nothing for weeks and weeks and weeks. But most of the time he's on our bench. He's kind of just another attacker for the team. We have Bruno, we have Salah, we have Palmer. And if we even want to go down from Bruno as well, I don't hate that, because you talked about, who am I forgetting of from West Ham, who scored and got an assist this week? Bowen. No, Bowen. Well, Kudos was just living offside. He should have had 2 or 3 goals in that game. He was offside every single time. But Bowen was fantastic in that match against Wolves. Wolves was completely overmatched against him. But we could even look to bring in a Bowen for a Fernandez. Now, we do have 5 transfers, so that kind of helps us right now. But how do you see that going beyond Timber? And do you think we try and keep Saka in the team?
Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? I feel like
putting your feet to the fire.
I think that the issue for me is I think Aït-Nouri has to go next week. Yeah. So that frees up a lot of money. I think Digne, I like Lewis Hall for this week, but I can't remember what Newcastle's fixtures are like after this.
It's okay. They have Ipswich away, which they'll probably concede, to be honest, because they concede away from home almost every game.
But not a bad run, all things considered, especially in January.
And at the price, too, it's good.
Yeah, so... For me, I'd be semi-tempted to look at taking out Digne and Aït-Nouri. And if we could get Timber and Trent instead of them, that's probably the best defense you could have.
So these moves, right? Trent, Timber, and then pivoting down from Digne to Cash, should we want to do that, we'd have 7-2 left in the bank right now.
How much is Bowen?
I believe he'd probably be 7-5, right? Did he go up in price?
I know he dropped though. 7-4.
No, he's still 7-4.
Or the other thing is, if we want to leave Saka in, we could then get rid of Bruno.
We have to get rid of Bruno, at that point.
So I guess it depends, what we want to do.
So if we got rid of Bruno, and then probably get rid of Colwill, most likely. The problem is if we want to bring in Trent, there's just no way without having a really, really cheap midfielder, right? We have 5-9 left, which, we could potentially bring in a Ahmad, an Enzo, a Rogers, and be just fine.
Yeah, I guess the other thing as well is we actually have 4 playing midfielders and 4 playing strikers. So at the minute, we've got a balanced squad. I think Semenyo's run is now really good.
Yeah, it's good.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
For a few weeks.
I would want him to play the next 4, 5. I'd want him to play the next 5 probably. So we can forego the last spot. Or like you say, bring in Enzo and have a benching headache. But I think moving Cunha next week, I'm semi-tempted to like, is Fulham at home a good enough fixture to fully maneuver our whole team out for Trent? Or do we just wait for this Wolves game to play out and then we have 6 transfers where we just absolutely decimate, get the 2 Wolves out, probably get either Saka or Fernandez out, and then start to rejig the defense then? I don't know.
I mean, so this would be our 5 transfers. So what would our team look like if we did these 5 transfers? Because you know that I'm already looking at bringing in Jackson. Like, that's happening, right? And then we could also look at bringing in Enzo, who I think would be a great option going forward. And that would still leave us, and then we'd have 3 Chelsea assets, all attacking. And we still have 14-7. I mean, to be honest, we could keep Saka in the team if we really wanted to, even with this structure right now. Because you wanted to bring in Timber, though. And so we could look at bringing in him because he's going to be great for us. And that still leaves us with 9 million in the midfield. So that could still stay as Bruno if we really wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
But you could also look to going, right, like if we wanted to go up to, let's just throw Gabriel in there for now. That would still leave us with 7-5, and you could put Bowen in that spot. And that would be our team, assuming Gabriel was healthy. That's our 6 transfers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a little bit more. And I do think Jackson is probably the other striker I'd be looking at outside of Isaac. So I do quite like that as well.
Yeah. Right. So I think this is an option for people. And this is where, you know, for me and why I wanted to talk, like, we're not wildcarding, but this is kind of how I would template my team, because the reason why this will work is because you don't have Saka. If you have Saka, then your team's going to be very template. And a lot of people are going to say, you got to have Palmer, got to have Salah, got to have Saka. But even if you don't want to do this, like, you could pivot down from Semenyo to a Rodgers is a move that I really like personally, and still have funds available, right? If you really wanted to. This is another option for you if you're just kind of looking at things, and if you want to go a little bit higher in certain spots, you can do that. Like even going from Pedro up to like a Wisa if you want to do that, because he's not very highly owned right now. So I think this is where I would template a team out for wildcard. But I think to your point, Tom, we're probably not making this move until after game week 16 is done, or after game week 16 is done. And then we could look to making a massive shift in the team, getting some of those Wolves assets out like we talked about over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, good idea.
I like it.
I guess it's just whether you want Jackson in now. Like, is Cunha versus Ipswich good enough cover for Jackson at Brentford? It probably is for this week, right?
Again, if it's not, I don't think it's a bad call, right? Yeah. I don't think that you have to make that switch, because to your point, Wolves should score 2 or 3 in this game, and Cunha should be involved in one of those goals. He really should. If he's not doing that, then he's out of everyone's team, and you just have to sell him before he drops, because he's going to drop if he doesn't score against Ipswich, or he gets no return against Ipswich. And then there's still Pedro, who's still looming in the team. We haven't talked about Pedro at all, even though he's done next to nothing over the past few game weeks. But he's got a great run of fixtures, and even as a bench forward, like, there's no reason to take him out. Just kind of keep him in the team, whether you start him or not, will be depending on who he's playing. But So you're thinking we just let it roll? We kind of built out the team so everyone could see it, how to look after this game week. But who do you think we should start in the team if we keep it as is?
Let's have a look, because what I mean is I just think this team on paper this week, the front 2, fantastic. The defense and keeper, fantastic. Salah, Saka, Palmer, Semenyo, great fixtures. The only one that I'm not happy with there is probably the Bruno fixture. But can you see Amram going to City and scoring, and is Bruno probably going to be involved? Like, you can see Man United going there and really fighting for it. That I don't necessarily think it's as bad fixture as it has been in recent years. So overall, this team on paper looks fantastic, and that's the only reason I'd be thinking, why don't we just roll again? Let's accumulate these transfers and then absolutely decimate it next week when the fixtures turn for Wolves and we can finally get them out. Yeah.
So how do you feel about Digne versus Hall in our last defender spot? Because we're probably going to start Aït-Nouri. We'll start Caldwell, hoping that he gets the clean sheet, even against Brentford, which will be tough. But how do you feel about our defense? Because I think the rest of it is pretty much sorted, unless you want to start Pedro over Semenyo. I think it's the other conversation to be had. But outside of that, I think we're pretty much set as it is. And I got to swap out the captains.
I think I'd rather Semenyo with West Ham. But equally, I think for me, I'd put Hall over Digne. and then I would consider doing Pedro over Bruno Fernandez. But that would be my only other
Really?
one, and that's a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
I'd leave that one up to you, just because I think Pedro's not been fantastic, and I think Bruno has been pretty good in the last like 5 game weeks. So
yeah, I mean, he scored against Forest, which was good. You know, I've been up and down with Bruno. The fixtures are good enough. I think, you know, the Liverpool one, you probably don't want to play him. But outside of that, I mean, even City away just isn't what we thought it was going to be, right? And especially, we know Lewis is suspended, and they once again lost against Juventus. So I'm not really worried about United being able to score against them because they've been conceding so many goals. And I think we kind of keep Bruno as is. But I like Hollett, Nuri Caldwell, Raya, obviously, in net. We're going to captain Cole Palmer. We'll make Salah the vice captain. And I think I'm with you. I want to start Semenyo over Pedro. It's tough. It's close. You know, whether it's West Ham or Palace, both are going to concede goals, but I'm fine with Semenyo here.
And hey, look, you got the bench the right order this time. You've now finally understood it.
So where are you at on the bench? Is Pedro our first bench? First guy off the bench? And then Digne Burgess? Yeah, some disrespect to the bench. Burgess came in the clutch for us this week.
Yeah, I got this
very clutch.
Well, I think that's looking good, and I enjoyed chatting through this week. I think it was kind of a lull in the week for FPL, and there's no one like really, really exciting to bring in. But I think it is just now starting to be a bit more strategic and thinking about longer term assets. So, yeah, thank you for joining me this week. And well, actually, I joined you. I'm the co-host, aren't I? So, thank me for joining you this week.
Thank you for joining me, Tom. I think we did a great job kind of laying out how we want to see the team. We'll see next week if we actually just clear everything out, kind of like we laid out. But I think the template that we gave people, both like if they are on Wildcard versus just kind of how we view it, you made a really good point. And it's funny, it's the same thing I said last week. You know, we could make all these changes, but I don't think it's changes that we necessarily have to make this week. Until those Wolves fixtures truly swing, I don't think we have to make them quite yet, because as you said, if Nuri and Cunha both return at a very high level this week, we'll probably keep them for another week. So we'll see what happens. But thank you, Tom, for joining me and for being my co-host on this great podcast. And thank you to everybody for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I hope you found a lot of valuable insights. I hope you liked our wildcard team, because, Tom, I really liked it. I really liked what we put together with that team. But until next time, good luck this game week, and we'll see you guys next week. We're out. Peace.